I not quite understand.
Well, actually, if you looked at some of SPL's responses, I got the feeling at one stage that each pig came from a very good family and had a higher education. In all honesty, it's not like that in China, but it does bring up one slight point about the FDA or what they can and cannot do. In the United States, they can knock on the door with no notice, and you must let them in, otherwise you are going to be in deep trouble. Abroad, ex-US, they have no similar authority. They must announce that they are coming there.
They actually have to be invited.
Sorry, you are quite right to be invited. And they have a schedule because they're away for 2 weeks and they've got a certain number of institutions to actually do it.
China just is not ready to manufacture pharmaceuticals for the United States or any other market. There's a couple of technical issues. You raised the issue of which GMP is appropriate in China. There's those people that are familiar with the different GMP practices in China. There are no change controls. There's no controls over subcontracting. The GMP rules in China are different and less stringent than the GMP controls in the United States. And so anyone who is sourcing, so again, going back to who's responsible and what is the responsibility, if you're sourcing product in China, you should be applying US GMP rules. China's legal system and regulatory system is simply not ready to implement an effective regulatory system in pharmaceuticals or anything else. Any cost advantage of manufacturing in China is going to be eliminated by the real cost of assuring product and safety. And I say that not because I'm bashing China. This is just not an area that China should be attempting to become a world-class player in. There's plenty of other areas where China, I think, has the capability to be a world-class manufacturer. Pharmaceuticals is not one of them.
I think I agree in the GMP aspect. We've tended to stick with Europe, who has a long legacy of API manufacture for the final API itself, because once you do get to the API, all you're going to be doing there is blending it with excipients. So if there's something in that API, then there would be a risk. So from my perspective now, we get a lot of leverage with China and India in the API world by utilizing the non-GMP aspects. But then there is a way, I think, to go forward with mitigation, and it is a responsibility of the companies. And there's a lot of things you can do up front to mitigate your risk. And that is, due diligence up front before you pick a company. There's a lot of companies in China who are very good. And if you look at them and look at their track record, you can go forward that way. But then you have to do other things. You have to do audits. You have to make sure that they have good systems in place for change control. Cleaning is one big thing. You have to make sure there's no cross-contamination in that regard. If they have really good systems in place, then that's a way to move forward. But then you have to monitor.
I think one thing to remember is that these are U.S. laws. They're not Chinese laws, they're not Indian laws. These are U.S. laws, and the FDA is charged with making sure that the drugs that come into the U.S. for sale meet certain standards, CGMP standards. And part of that is they are charged with inspecting the plants that produce those drugs. And I have to tell you, I think you all know it, they have done an absolute terrible, terrible job. I mean, they're like the General Motors of the U.S. government. These folks are so far behind the times in terms of recognizing globalization that it's really kind of sad. And when you look at the number of foreign facilities that are going to be inspected, the FDA is very proud that next year in 2010, they are going to double foreign inspections, and that's great, to 400, okay, to 400. And there are 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 facilities that need to be inspected.
But I think going forward, there has to be greater harmonization between the US FDA and the local FDA in India, as we call it. Because at the end of the day, sitting thousands of miles away, it is not possible to create the kind of compliance as is required. So I see a very strong case of collaboration between the respective FDAs of the countries. And for them to share equal responsibility. I mean, today, typically, if the US FDA comes for an inspection, the Indian FDA has nothing to do with it. And going forward, I would recommend something like, maybe joint inspections and a gradual building of pressure on the local FDA authorities, because they are in far greater, they have the capacity for doing these spot inspections. I mean, let's agree, the US FDA does have to give you a certain amount of notice, and that itself is so self-defeating, because then you get time preparation. And in fact, I always say in my experience that look at the production records of the company which you're going to inspect as to their throughput in the previous 1 month and a few months before that. You would find that there is a significant slowdown in production because they're all preparing for the audit. So you get such an advanced lead time to prepare for it. I'm not aware, I've personally participated in one surprise US FDA audit in one of my assignments, which perhaps was the only case in India it happened. It happened because of a certain goof up. But every company gets time to prepare, and I think going forward that is a weak link in the area.
The ethical and what will eventually become the legal standard, I predict within 5 years, is that every company will be required to have a state-of-the-art risk program that will apply to both seeking out adulteration and assuring GMP standards. It will require a state-of-the-art scientific testing program to try to devise whatever methods you can to try to figure out what might be wrong and to make sure that it's not. And the standard for that is strict liability. In addition, it's going to require due diligence. You better go visit every single subcontractor, and you better make sure you understand who all the subcontractors are in the country that you're doing business, which alone is going to require more than 2 days visit in Shanghai. And you better understand as well where every single supplier, and visit every one of those factories and look around and kick the tires on. If you're not doing that in China, you're acting recklessly. You're not even close to the state of the art. The state of the art is figuring out how to solve the problem that this gentleman has posed, which is this is a difficult scientific problem to solve. Well, put good scientists to work on it.
China, a different way of looking at this, though, in a different perspective, is first of all, China has a terrific educational system for chemistry. And they have resources that we here in America don't have. They have competitive cost structure. There is a lot of benefit to being there. That said, there is tremendous opportunity in China to put your own people over there, number one. Number two, for partnerships to be made from companies that can assure the supply chain in China. It is an amazing opportunity that I think we don't want to turn away from. So whereas we may say that the regulatory agencies aren't quite ready for prime time, for those people that can assure the quality chain, and it can be done, there are tremendous benefits to reap. So I want to add that to the other side of the coin.
It's a huge if. Unless you're serious about making that if, unless you're serious about for those companies who are willing to assure the supply chain, then you shouldn't be there. But